park is loud with Saturday laughter, yet she sits at the edge of the fountain where the water keeps its own soft time. A small figure in a faded cardigan with a silver pin that catches light when the clouds open. This is Mrs. Eleanor Hart, a woman whose hands tremble when she lifts a paper cup of tea, whose shoes remember long streets and long winters, whose presence is thin enough for people to see through. A group of teenagers skates past, and the closest one mutters that the bench is not a museum. One boy smirks and asks if she is waiting for an autograph from a squirrel. She offers a gentle smile that no one returns. Two joggers swerve at the last second as if she were a misplaced trash can. She does not complain. She just traces the rim of the cup with her thumb and watches the pigeons argue in the dust. Her family will arrive later, out of duty more than love. They will speak loudly around her, not to her, and correct her for misremembering dates they never lived. They will ask her to sign a form that they promise will simplify everything. They will say that the city changes and that she should not expect to recognize it. She will nod as if agreeing. She will tuck the pen away and forget to bring it back. By noon, a crowd gathers near the bandstand where a tall white tarp hides a new statue to honor a movement that saved this neighborhood from being swallowed by glass and steel. Speeches will be given. Names will be read. Photographers will aim at the cloth and not at her. It would be easier to believe that she is no one. It would be easier to walk past. But that is not the truth. The truth is standing quietly at the fountain breathing. And when the tarp drops, what happens next will silence the boys with the skateboards, the joggers with the perfect watches, and even the family that calls her a nobody. Have you ever underestimated someone and then felt the floor shift under your certainty? Would you forgive or would you fight? The city park was not always this polished, not always filled with trimmed hedges and perfect walking paths. Decades ago, it was a rough ground where weeds grew taller than children and broken bottles glistened like dangerous stars in the grass. Back then, no one thought the park mattered. Developers wanted the land for high-rise towers. The city council said it was too expensive to save. Families avoided it. The only ones who remained were the forgotten immigrants, workers, widows, and children with nowhere else to play. It was in those days that Eleanor Hart, then a woman in her 30s, walked these same streets with fierce eyes and a notebook tucked under her arm. She believed that a community without a heart would not survive. She believed the park was that heart. She gathered mothers who feared for their children. She convinced workers who had no voice. She stood in front of city officials who laughed at her accent and her plain clothes. Years passed. She wrote petitions when no one wanted to sign. She spoke at hearings when no one listened. She marched with neighbors when the city tried to sell the land. Slowly, piece by piece, she built a movement. What seemed like an ordinary park bench today was once a battlefield where she sat with others, planning strategies late into the night. Now, the world has forgotten. The teenagers skating past see only an old woman with tired eyes. Her children see only someone who misplaces keys and repeats stories. The officials who once fought her now speak of progress and forget her name. But the park remembers. The stones, the trees, the paths, every inch was saved by her relentless fight. And today, as the stage is decorated with flowers and the tarp hides a statue of the unknown founder of the community movement, history itself waits to breathe her name again. The sun climbs higher, striking the tarp that covers the statue, turning it into a glowing shroud. The crowd grows restless. City officials in crisp suits prepare their speeches. Families bring children with balloons. The teenagers from earlier lounge on their skateboards, waiting for the moment when the mayor will speak. Everyone looks toward the stage. No one looks toward her. Eleanor adjusts the shawl over her shoulders, her hands shaking slightly. She can hear her family now, approaching from behind. Her daughter carries a handbag too large for its purpose, speaking loudly into a phone. Her son-in-law complains about traffic and the lack of parking. Her grandchildren glance at her with thin patience, whispering that she walks too slowly, that she should just sit down and not wander off. When Eleanor tries to tell them that she has been coming to this park longer than any of them have been alive, they hush her gently, the way one calms a child. They smile without listening, then turn back to their own conversations. To them, she is only a fragile figure to be managed, not a voice to be heard. As the mayor takes the microphone, the tension grows. He speaks of sacrifice, of community, of the nameless individuals who fought for justice. The words echo hollow as if lifted from a script. The audience applauds. Politely, Eleanor's family claps too, without knowing that the words describe the very woman sitting beside them. Her heart beats heavy in her chest. She remembers the nights spent walking home alone after meetings, the ridicule she endured, the moments when she almost gave up but did not, and now to be erased in silence, to be ignored in the very place she bled her spirit for, feels like a wound deeper than any she has known. The conflict is not between her and the city, nor her and strangers. It is between her truth and the blindness of those around her. The park is alive with celebration, yet she feels invisible in the center of it. And in that invisibility, pain grows sharp. Long before the applause, long before the mayor's polished voice filled the park, there were years of silence. Eleanor's past is not a simple one. It is stitched with scars that most people never care to see. She grew up in a narrow brick house where the windows rattled in winter, where her father came home from the factory with hands too torn to hold her gently, where her mother measured bread slices so carefully that no crumb was wasted. From her earliest days, Eleanor learned that survival meant fighting for every inch. When she married young, her husband believed dreams were luxuries they could not afford. He told her that saving a park was foolish, that no one would ever listen to her. When he passed away unexpectedly, neighbors whispered that she should remarry for security. Instead, she chose to fight for something larger than herself. They called her stubborn, unrealistic, even hysterical. At city meetings, she stood before men in polished suits who laughed when she mispronounced bureaucratic terms. They told her to go home, to let professionals handle it. Developers sent her threatening letters. Strangers spat near her shoes when she protested on the sidewalks. Her children, too, learned to be embarrassed. When she returned late at night, exhausted but burning with conviction, they sighed that their mother cared more for a crumbling park than for her family. They wanted comfort, not crusades. By the time they were adults, they had rewritten her story in their minds. She was just a woman who wasted time on impossible dreams. The injustices piled like stones on her shoulders. The people she helped forgot her name. The officials who once mocked her built careers on the very reforms she demanded. Her family reduced her legacy to a nuisance, and now, in her old age, she is spoken to as if she were a child who cannot follow simple instructions. Every insult, every dismissal, every cold laugh has gathered into this moment. Sitting on the bench, watching the mayor praise the spirit of the unknown founder, Eleanor feels the sharp edge of invisibility once again. Decades of struggle buried under silence. But silence has its limit, and soon the park will speak for her. The speeches drag on, words stacked upon words, but the crowd's eyes remain fixed on the white tarp that covers the statue. The moment of unveiling draws near. A hush sweeps across the park as the mayor gestures toward the monument, promising that it will honor the spirit of resilience that saved this community. Eleanor's family leans forward, curious but not expectant. The teenagers balance on their boards, waiting for the cloth to fall so they can judge the design. Cameras flash, lenses ready, and then it happens. The rope is pulled, the tarp collapses, and the statue reveals itself under the noon sun. Gasps ripple through the crowd. At the base of the pedestal, carved in bronze letters, is a name, Eleanor Hart. Above it, the figure of a woman cast in stone, shoulders squared, notebook in hand, gaze unyielding. It is her younger face, immortalized in the act of defiance that saved this very park. The silence that follows is heavy, almost sacred. The mayor stumbles over his words, unprepared for the raw electricity that seizes the crowd. Children look from the statue to the old woman on the bench, recognizing the same eyes. The teenagers who mocked her let their boards clatter to the ground. Eleanor's family stares in disbelief, their mouths half open, unable to reconcile the woman they dismissed with the figure of honor, standing 10 feet tall in stone. Eleanor does not rise. She simply breathes, watching decades of humiliation turn into reverence in an instant. The park itself seems to exhale, as if remembering its true guardian. For the first time in years, her silence does not make her invisible, it makes her undeniable. The world has shifted. The ignored has become the immortal. The air trembles as realization spreads. Dozens of eyes turn, one by one, toward the frail figure sitting quietly at the fountain. At first it is only whispers. Is that her? Could it be? But soon the whispers rise into waves of voices calling her name. Eleanor. Eleanor Hart. The mayor freezes, unsure whether to continue with his rehearsed speech. His polished confidence fractures as the audience shifts its attention away from him and onto the small woman in the worn cardigan. Reporters swing their cameras around. Photographers abandon the podium and rush toward the fountain. Eleanor's grandchildren stare, wide-eyed, no longer restless or impatient. Her daughter's phone slips from her hand. The son-in-law, who moments earlier had complained about traffic, stands in stunned silence. For the first time in years, they do not see her as a fragile burden but as something vast, something unshakable. The teenagers approach awkwardly, the bravado drained from their faces. One of them stammers out, "Is it really you?" Their earlier mockery now feels like ashes in their mouths. The mayor, finally catching his breath, tries to recover control by inviting Eleanor to the stage. But the crowd has already moved. People surround her, offering hands, some with tears in their eyes. A little girl places a flower in her lap, whispering thank you. Eleanor rises slowly, steadied not by her family, but by the gratitude of strangers who now see her for who she is. She walks with quiet dignity toward the statue. Each step erases years of invisibility. Each step strips away the silence that once confined her. When she reaches the pedestal, the cheers erupt, thunderous, unstoppable. In that storm of recognition, Eleanor is no longer the ignored old woman in the park. She is the founder, the fighter, the guardian whose name will never again be forgotten. Her eyes glisten, but her hands are steady. For the first time, she feels the weight of justice, not injustice. As the cheers settle into a steady rhythm of applause, Eleanor stands before her own likeness in stone. The statue is taller than memory, brighter than time, but the face is hers, the younger woman who refused to surrender when the city turned its back. She looks up at it not with pride, but with relief, as if the world finally caught up to a truth she had carried alone for decades. The mayor, realizing he has lost control of the moment, steps back from the podium. He gestures awkwardly for Eleanor to speak, but she does not need microphones or titles. She turns, her voice soft yet carrying through the hush of the park. "I only wanted a place where children could run safely, a place where families could sit together, a place where we could all belong. No grand speech, no rehearsed slogans, just truth, and it is enough." Tears flow down cheeks across the crowd because they understand now the park is not only green space, it is a monument to her sacrifice. Her family edges closer, guilt written across their faces. Her daughter reaches for her hand, whispering apologies she cannot yet form into full sentences. The grandchildren look at her with new eyes, seeing not weakness but greatness. For the first time, they understand that the quiet old woman at their table was the architect of their very community. The teenagers lower their heads. One mutters, "I'm sorry," barely above a whisper. Eleanor simply nods, forgiving with the gentleness of someone who has carried heavier burdens than thoughtless words. The park, once nearly lost to glass and steel, now breathes with life and memory. Families wander its paths with gratitude. Children chase each other across the grass that Eleanor once defended in endless meetings. The statue glows in the sunlight, a sentinel of history, reminding everyone who passes that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary victories. And Eleanor, she sits once more on the bench, but this time the space around her is never empty. Strangers greet her, children wave. Her own family stays close. She is not invisible anymore. She is not forgotten. In the days that follow, the statue becomes more than a monument. It becomes a gathering place, a reminder that history is not built by the powerful alone, but by the persistence of those who refuse to be silenced. Visitors place flowers at its base. School groups come to hear the story of the woman who saved their park. Tour guides add her name to their scripts. For Eleanor's family, life changes quietly but profoundly. Her daughter begins to walk with her through the park every morning, listening rather than correcting. Her grandchildren no longer rush ahead, they slow down, asking questions about the past they once dismissed. The son-in-law, humbled, finds himself telling colleagues with pride that his mother-in-law is the founder immortalized in stone. The word burden is never spoken again. The teenagers, too, return, this time not to mock, but to sit and listen. They hear about a woman who stood alone against City Hall, who fought for something bigger than herself, who won. One of them, notebook in hand, begins sketching not graffiti, but a portrait of her face. And Eleanor? She moves through the park each day with quiet grace. People greet her by name. Strangers thank her. Children climb on the base of her statue and wave down to her as if she were royalty. Yet she never carries herself as a queen. She remains the same woman who once believed that saving a small park mattered more than comfort, more than approval, more than recognition. One evening, as the sun sinks behind the trees, Eleanor rests on her bench, looking at the statue bathed in gold. For a moment, she sees not herself, but every neighbor who marched beside her, every mother who signed a petition, every child who deserved a safe place to run. The statue may bear her face, but it holds their story. Her lips curve into a smile. The world that once ignored her now remembers her. And the park, alive with laughter, is the proof that she was never invisible. She was always the heart of this place,